keep your songbooks out, the red songbooks, because we're going to get to those in a second. But first I want to start off with, what do you think is worthy of your time? What do you think is worthy to really be able to do during the day? What is worthless? What is worthless in your life? Worthless by definition means no worth. I'm sure there's a fancier definition for Chase or JR, but for me it's just no worth. What have you thought in your life before was worthless? What in your life do you think is worthless? What are past experiences you might think are worthless? What items do you have at home? Like a curling iron, a straightener, Xbox, video games. I mean, you can go on and on. There's so much that I can live without. There's so many worthless things at my house that I do not need. I don't even need a bed. That could be considered worthless. For others, probably not worthless. Have you ever considered a situation in your life to be worthless? Have you ever considered something that happens, or have you ever considered someone in that situation to be worthless? Have you ever thought that this person is just a waste of space? I use that phrase because one day when I was still working for Bruce Carpenter, I was, throwing hay. It was really hot, and we did really want to be out there at the time because we were all angry. And this new guy comes up, and he's really big, he's hairy, and on top of it's 100 degrees outside. And on top of all that, he's got a t-shirt, a long sleeve shirt, and then a flannel on, all rolled down, sleeves completely rolled down. I'm shocked. And then 10 minutes later, he's gone. He had to quit because he was almost dead. He literally could barely walk. He had to go home. Thankfully, he only lived about 5 minutes away, so someone took him there and then got right back. But I remember later on that day, me and Caden and some other guys were in one of the barns that we were putting the hay in, that we were restacking the hay in, and one of the guys says, "Man, that guy was a waste of space. He is a waste of space. Tomorrow, if he comes back, we're going to make sure that we put him out again. We're going to work hard as we can to make sure that he gets tired so that he goes home again, because he is worthless." I thought that was hilarious. I laughed. And I've said that story a couple more times because I thought it was funny. But is he worthless? In Ephesians chapter 4, in verse 7, it says, I'd help if I was on the right page. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 7, it says, "But grace was given to each one of us according to the measure of Christ's gift." The measure of Christ's gift. Turn over to Luke chapter 22. I called this man worthless in the times I told people this story. And so this other guy, I laughed at it. I said, yeah, he is worthless. He was out here for 5 minutes. He got pooted out and he had to leave. I don't want him back. I don't want him here. Have you ever done that to somebody? Have you ever just crossed them off just because, they don't really mean that much to me in my life. I can do without them. They're pretty annoying anyway. They smell bad. Who have you crossed off? I've done it many times. But is that okay? Because in Luke, starting in chapter 22, we all know this story really well. It's when the crucifixion of Jesus starts to occur. In chapter 22, starting verses 47 through 53, that explains when Jesus was betrayed by one of his followers, by one of the disciples, Judas. In verse 63, it says the soldiers mocked and beat him, flogged him. In chapter 23, in verse 36, it says soldiers mocked him. verses 39 through 43, he was hanged with criminals. They put big nails through his hands and through his feet on a cross. Hanged above the ground with nails through his flesh and around his bone. In verse 46, finally, he says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last. If you want to turn back to number 677 in the hymn book, we're going to read that again. I know we just sung some of these songs, but let's just go through it again. I'm just going to go through the start at the chorus. Jesus died and paid it on a cross of Calvary, and my heart was melted at his dying call. Oh, his heart was broken on the tree for you and me, and the debt is canceled. Jesus paid it all. The debt is canceled. Jesus paid it all. Now, if we go to 696, I led it for a reason. Not just because I really like it, and I always lead it. Verse 3, it says, Why feel the garden's dreadful dross? Why through his trials go? Why suffer death upon the cross? Because he loves me so. I love this song and I love this verse, but it just doesn't get deep enough into what he went through. And we all know. I mean, we've heard it many times before. We all know exactly what he went through. But do we really? Do we actually think about it? The pain that he went through, the shame that he went through, and he didn't have to. There's a song, I didn't mark it down, but there's a song called 10,000 Angels. He could have called 10,000 angels to set him free. He didn't have to be on the cross. In Luke chapter 22, in verse 42, that was when he prayed. He prayed to God and said, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. He didn't want to feel that pain. He didn't want to have to go through that, but he did. He chose to. That's the thing that we always miss. He chose to. He chose to let them put the nails through his skin, through his flesh, through his tendons, through his muscles. He let them flog him. He let them beat them. He let them shame him, even though he was God in human flesh. Number 158 in the hymn book. Nailed to the cross. There was one who was willing to die in my stead, that a soul so unworthy might live. And the path to the cross he was willing to tread, all the sins of my life to forgive. He is tender and loving and patient with me, while he cleanses my heart of its dross. But there's no condemnation. I know I am free, for my sins are all nailed to the cross. Nailed to the cross because he was nailed to the cross. I will cling to my Savior and never depart. I will joyfully journey each day with a song on my lips and a song in my heart that my sins have been taken away because of what he did. And finally in 604. I've used this before in a sermon, but we'll go ahead and read it anyway. I was not in the garden when he knelt to God and prayed. I did not kiss him on the cheek when Jesus was betrayed. I could not do a single thing to hurt God's only Son, but every time I sin on earth, I feel that I'm the one. I was not at the trial when the crowd jeered at his name. I did not make him bear a cross or walk a road of shame. I was not on the hillside when he gave his life that day. I did not nail his precious hands or take his robe away. I couldn't do a single thing to hurt God's only Son, but every time I sin on earth, I feel that I'm the one. I'm the one who shouted, "Crucify." I'm the one who made his cross so high. I'm the one who stood and watched him die. What have I done? I'm the one. We just don't think about what he went through enough. I know we always read these verses. We always go into the facts of how, what tools they would use to flog him with or beat him with, how they nailed him to the cross. But put yourself in his shoes and really think. Would you have done it? Seriously. Be honest. Would you have done it for me? I wouldn't do it for me, because I know me. And it's funny. It sounds funny, but trust me, I know me. Like Paul said, I'm the chief of sinners. I know exactly who I am and what I have done, and I wouldn't have done it for me. I wouldn't have done it for outside. I wouldn't have done it for the outside world. I wouldn't have done it for the people who, I don't really have to go into detail, especially with this upcoming election, all the stuff that we've had to hear and had to listen to and see. All the riots, the murders. We know exactly what's been going on. I would never, ever choose to die and go through that kind of pain for those people. For me. I can go on and on. I can go from hymn to hymn. There are so many more hymns that describe the pain he went through. There are so many hymns that describe what happened on the cross, how he was put to shame, how he was put to death, how he was brought to pain. And there's so many more verses I can read. There's a couple more books in this Bible that I could read. Different, the same story but different authors. I could read from Mark, I could read from Matthew, I could read from John. You get the same story, but you could still come out with you can still come out with something new learned. You can still come out with something revived in you. Because a lot of times we just go through the motions, and I know you hear it all the time. I do too. It gets annoying, I know. But when are we going to act on it? When are we going to realize what we did to Jesus, what I did to Jesus, and when are we going to realize that it is a sin to call something or someone worthless because of what he went through? I called that man worthless. How dare me? Shame on me. How can you call someone worthless when Jesus was put up on the cross, mocked and shamed, and was put to death because he thought that they had worth? How can I think a situation is worthless? How can I think that, this is just worthless? I'm not going to go and talk to him or her just because it's not going to do anything. It doesn't matter. I don't really want to anyway. He smells again. How is that okay? How is that okay to do that to someone when he said through his death that they were worth something? You have to remember what we're worth. And you have to remember through the Bible, through what Jesus said. He died for us, so obviously we're worth something to him. If you say otherwise, I don't envy what is to come. If you are not a Christian tonight and you want to have that worth, there's warm water. I'm pretty sure it's not cold. There's water in the back. You can be baptized right now. I love how Grant or Nick Hall will say this all the time whenever they get up here. Don't leave this building with a doubt in your mind that you're not gonna go to heaven. Leave this building knowing that you are going to be with Jesus. Leave this building knowing that you are going to be able to go to heaven and see what he did, and see him. See the man that saved you so many years ago. See the man that saved you when you weren't even born yet. If you are a Christian but you've fallen away, hopefully you realize what you're worth to Jesus. Just don't leave this building with a doubt in your mind. You can, in your pew, pray, ask forgiveness. You can come up to the front, ask for the prayers of the congregation. We will help you. If you are subject to the invitation, please come.